I'm Maria Donoghue, and I am an associate professor in the Department of Biology. And what I do is, so I teach undergraduates, I mentor graduate students, so PhD students. I have a research laboratory and we study the molecules that underlie brain development. When I was a college student, I saw my relationship with my professors almost the way that you would think about a gas station, which is that I drive in and then they give me information and then I leave. And I tried my very best as a college student not to get to know my professors. And I think I suffered for that. I think my undergraduate experience was not nearly as rich as it could have been if I had given myself let myself be available to those people. So now as a professor, I really, really look at teaching as a relationship. And so I know that feels a little spooky to some students, but I try to make it a professional relationship, right? Like it's not, I mean, except for the fact that I wanted them to come to my house at Thanksgiving, I really see it as, I view my students as developing scholars, and the relationship I want to have with them is centered around the way they view the world and the way they think. I've been in 4 university settings, and 2 of those settings, I think, like institutionally, had a sense of community. So one of them was, I was out at WashU when I was a grad student, and at WashU, you know, whether you were a student or whether you were a faculty member, there were explicitly stated expectations of what that position in their community meant, and by and large, people lived up to those expectations. When I was a professor at Yale, that didn't happen. So at Yale, there were like lone dogs, and everybody had their own research effort, and the sense of community was incredibly limited. And that could be because I was at a med school, and I think it might be different in a college environment, but certainly I felt like there was nobody supporting me, and I didn't support others, right? So when I came here 6 years ago, I was so relieved that it felt more like what I was used to at WashU, right? That my sense is that we are an intimate and fairly small academic community. So there's 800 what we call normal or ordinary faculty. So this is these tenure track lines, and then maybe like another 800 that are adjunct. So that's a pretty small community. To the point where, like, when I was recruited here, there was an orientation for all new faculty, and the president had a reception for the 30 new faculty that year. And when there were questions about sort of my tenure clock, the provost actually called me and asked me to come on over so we could talk about it. So what I feel like is there's an investment in people here that is terrific, right? And I think that there is support for me, and there is the expectation that I will support others. So there's really great mentoring of, some professors mentoring new faculty so that they'll be successful. There's an expectation that when someone's recruited here, they intend for those people to do well, and I think that that's not true of other universities that I've been at. I think the collaboration is pretty good within the confines that are available, right? I think that a huge improvement would be embedding faculty more into students' lives. And so the one thing, the model that I really love from Yale, and why I suspect that the college environment's different than the med school that I came from, is the dormitories have 600 to 1,000 students, and in that setting there are 10 to 20 faculty living among the students, right? And so in that college environment, it's really hard for a student not to get to know some faculty well. So what I wish here was, I know you have a Jesuit living in your dormitory, but I think not everyone has that experience. And like I said, I put myself back when I was in college. I mean, I did everything I could not to interact with faculty, right? And so I think that if you put a person in the dining hall and, in a dormitory, then that relationship becomes more natural, right? And the relationship isn't like I want to actually be like a mother or a sister or something to students. What I want to do is be a role model to students about how to be an intellectual. But that's not to say that I don't have a personal piece to my life, and I think sharing that is okay as long as it's done professionally. I hear very mixed reports on the freshman orientation. Some students say it was fantastic. It made them feel at home, and others, it wasn't that for them. And I don't know what the difference is. I don't know if it's, the composition of the group or the group leader or the students, where they come from and how available they are to join a community. But I think that community isn't built in a single week, right? And it's certainly not built when all of these vulnerable students are just like trying to figure out, where things are on campus. It's built over time, right? And so I would say that if there was some way, especially for the freshmen, to keep that orientation going and that they meet up once a week and, something so that the integration of freshmen into our university community happens over a semester, not in a week. And so the problem with that, the impediment, is our students are so busy, right? And if we said to them, okay, we want 1 more hour of your week to do this, I think that they wouldn't think that was a good thing for them, even though, it might be. Something that I think, I pay attention to a lot is I don't know what diversity means, right? So there's the diversity you can see, but then I think that there's a lot of other kind of diversity that you can't see, right? And a huge divider on campus is socioeconomics, right? And it's just amazing, and so I don't know that we do a good job highlighting that, right? Because there are people of such privilege, and then there are people who really struggle, right? And I don't know how to even that out. So we were looking for a new provost last year, and we were telling every applicant who came in about our Jesuit identity. And one applicant said, look, I have a kid who's at Northwestern, and Northwestern also wants to educate well-rounded people, and they care about service to the community. So why is Georgetown different than Northwestern, right? And it's not a sense of community, it's not a sense of service. I think it's centered around those Ignatian ideas of wholeness of self leads to wholeness of group, right? And that's a religious perspective, right? So I think that when students come to Georgetown, they have to know that they're joining a religious university, because it is, right? And then I think what I've done, because I didn't know so much about this, was I've really learned about Ignatius. And I think that his philosophy is a philosophy that can guide so many of us. And I was worried at first about coming to a Catholic university and doing science, right? Because sometimes the Catholic Church says things that are hard for scientists to accommodate to. And yet what I felt like is the fact that faith is on the table, that beliefs are something that are expected to be discussed, makes the conversations more rich. One of the women who works in my lab is Muslim, and she is observant, and obviously so because she wears a headscarf, right? And so I said to her, why didn't you go to a place where it wouldn't, your faith and the faith of the university weren't different, right? And she said that she thinks it's easier to be observant and non-Catholic here than it might be other places, because at least everyone comes here appreciating that beliefs are going to be part of the conversation. A person's beliefs are expected to be examined and discussed, and what I really like is that there's no expectation that you have to have Catholic beliefs, right? I think that if you have beliefs, people are willing to discuss and work around individual sort of variation. And then for me as a neuroscientist, it's awesome, right? Because I get to think about, the brain and the molecules that guide cells to do their thing, and then the output of that is this soul, right? And consciousness. And so it's really interesting for me to talk to philosophers and theologians to try to figure that out. And more I'm hoping that we can figure out ways that students can participate in that too, because for students who aren't very religious, it might be a really good way of bringing sort of religious beliefs into an equation that doesn't feel like a conversion, but rather just, what is it?